Doug Weapon woke choking. His lungs burned as though he'd inhaled seed water. He bolted upright, sheets tangled around his legs, sweat freezing across his back. For half a second, the ceiling above him glowed faintly green. Not a reflection. Not a trick of the light. Green. He blinked. Drywall. Ceiling fan. The same hairline crack he'd meant to patch since last fall. Normal. Doug dragged a breath into his chest like a man who had almost drowned. His pulse hammered in his ears. Beneath it, he swore he could still hear something rushing. Not wind, not traffic. Water. A lot of water. He pressed his hands against his face and tried to shake the dream loose. Fragments clung stubbornly. White towers collapsing inward, gold running molten through empty streets, a black ocean threaded with blinking eyes, a sky peeling open like skin. A voice, calm, deliberate, whispering something he almost understood. Restore. The word dissolved before he could grab it. Jesus, Doug muttered hoarsely. The clock read 10:14 a.m., March 20th, first day of spring. In Cleveland, that mostly meant winter with better marketing. First day off in 3 weeks. The life of a man behind the wheel of a salt truck. Doug swung his legs out of bed and immediately regretted it. His knees barked first. Sharp, electric. His lower back joined the protest a moment later, followed by the dull, grinding ache in his hands that never quite left once March rolled around. Lake Erie had opinions about joints. Doug's joints were tired of negotiating. Happy equinox, he muttered. Outside the bedroom window, Ohio City looked exactly like it always did in late March. Gray, wet, and stubbornly half-frozen. Dirty snow clung to the edges of sidewalks. Potholes the size of dinner plates filled with brown meltwater along West 44th. Somewhere down the block, a snowblower sat abandoned beside a trash bin like a soldier who'd survived one war too many. Doug stretched carefully. Municipal road maintenance sounded like a simple job until winter happened. Then Cleveland turned into a full-contact sport. He shuffled toward the kitchen. His gaming rig still hummed faintly in the corner, LEDs blinking like a tired Christmas tree. Last night's D&D marathon had gone until nearly 3. Gordy lost another cleric. Mark nearly wiped the entire party. Terry rolled a miracle natural 20 that saved everyone. Doug pointed a finger at the computer. That's what happens when you respect the dice, he muttered. The dream was probably just that. Too much caffeine, too much fantasy, too much staying up until stupid o'clock arguing about dragons and tactical flanking bonuses. Coffee fixed most problems. Doug filled the machine and leaned against the counter while it began dripping. Outside, sunlight tried its best to pretend Cleveland had entered a warmer season. Inside, the house smelled faintly of drywall dust and last winter's heating bill. The television murmured in the living room. Warming trend expected across much of northern Ohio today, the weather anchor chirped. Temperatures climbing into the low 40s, maybe even touching 50 this afternoon. Doug snorted. Bold claim. Coffee filled the mug. He wrapped his hand around it gratefully. The arthritis eased slightly. Then the television voice changed. Breaking news this morning out of the Bahamas. Doug only half listened. An archaeological team has uncovered what may be the oldest submerged ruins ever discovered in the Atlantic. Doug turned slowly. The screen showed divers cutting through brilliant blue Caribbean water. Beneath them, long rectangular blocks stretched across the seabed in eerie, deliberate lines. His stomach tightened. Located near the Great Bahama Bank, the anchor continued. Researchers estimate the size could date back to approximately 12,000 years, coinciding with the end of the last ice age. Doug felt the number land in his chest like a dropped wrench. 12,000 years. The footage shifted to a marine archaeologist pointing at a digital reconstruction. We're approaching this cautiously, he said. The Younger Dryas period involved rapid climate shifts and significant sea level rise. Natural limestone formations can sometimes appear structured. Doug winced. He hated when he knew things like this. Younger Dryas, meltwater pulses, flood myths across half the planet, Gobekli Tepe buried deliberately, arguments about erosion patterns on the Sphinx. Doug rubbed his forehead. He was a municipal roads worker, not an archaeologist, not a historian, not some podcast guy who yelled about ancient aliens at 3 a.m. Just a dude who occasionally fell down internet rabbit holes. The footage switched again. Now a NOAA representative spoke calmly into the camera. There is currently no credible evidence of advanced civilization prior to established Neolithic timelines. The formations are almost certainly geological anomalies. Speculation beyond that is premature. Premature. Doug took a slow sip of coffee and shook his head. Green sky, water withdrawing. He set the mug down carefully. Must be a coincidence, he thought to himself. He pulled on an old hoodie and stepped outside. March air bit through the fabric immediately. Ohio City smelled like thawing pavement in yesterday's rain. Doug's house stood before him in its unusual state of enthusiastic disrepair. The siding still needed replacing. The fence leaned like it had philosophical disagreements with gravity. The gutters have been threatening to retire since Thanksgiving. Yeah, Doug muttered, I'll fix that. But he wouldn't. Not today. Instead, he wandered into the backyard. Last year's garden sat collapsed under winter leftovers. He crouched slowly and dug his fingers into the soil. Still rich, still alive. He liked that. Every spring he promised himself he'd go bigger. Heirloom varieties, companion planting, maybe even try cucumbers again. Every summer it ended up the same. Tomatoes, peppers, basil, manageable things, predictable things. Balance. Doug frowned slightly at the word. His phone buzzed. Group chat. Mark. Still can't believe you pulled that roll. Terry. Luck. Pure luck. Doug. Skill. Pure skill. He hesitated, then added. You see the Bahama Anomaly story? Terry. Is that a band? Mark. Bro, you patch potholes for a living. Doug sighed while rubbing a hand through his hair. Fair. He slid the phone back into his pocket. Inside the house, it felt quieter than before. His eyes drifted toward the kitchen counter. The book, The Silent Gods and the Forgotten Ages. He'd found it last weekend at a rummage sale buried between cookbooks and VHS tapes. The leather cover was cracked but intact. The pages smelled like dust and old attics. He hadn't meant to buy it. The title had simply lingered. Doug picked it up. The leather felt cool. For a fraction of a second, he had the strange impression the cover shifted. Not visually, not dramatically, just a faintest suggestion of depth where flat leather should be. He blinked. Old paper, static electricity, nothing more. He knew exactly who would appreciate it. Miranda Alden, owner of the Blackwood Archive, Cleveland's most stubborn occult bookstore. He'd been going there for about a year, sometimes to browse, sometimes to argue, mostly to talk, and if he was honest, to see her. Doug grabbed his jacket. Just dropping off a book, he muttered. Nothing more. But as he stood there in the kitchen, arthritis humming faintly in his joints and coffee cooling on the counter, Doug Weapon felt something shift. Almost imperceptibly. Not fear, not excitement, just a quiet sense that history had a habit of resurfacing, and that maybe he had dreamed of something he wasn't supposed to remember. Doug stared at the book one last time. The news anchor's voice drifted faintly from the living room, still talking about submerged stone 12,000 years. While somewhere deep in his memory, the sky was still green.